Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey everybody, welcome to Paranormal Karen. It is, I believe, June 11th, and you guys are going to be so excited. Do I have anything to... I should be in Cape Cod right now. Hopefully there's an ad on here on the podcast. I should be in Cape Cod. Come see me at Tin Pan Alley. I'll do an ad with more details on that. So excited. My guest today, it's very funny because I think that a lot of my listeners, we all kind of have overlapping listeners and podcasts. And I know you guys must have been like, where is Jessica and Oscar? And I just finally met Jessica. Jessica, welcome to Paranormal Karen. How are you?
Hi, Karen. I'm so good. I'm so happy to be here.
I know. It was so nice to meet you. And I actually flubbed up. I was making an appointment with you, and I flubbed up the how you do it with the request in the beginning, and then life got crazy. But I have you here. What would you say, my dear, is the best description of what you do?
So I suppose I would start with like my actual qualifications for what I do with people in sessions. I'm an integrative healing coach. So I'm not a therapist. I'm definitely a coach. But the way that I work is through empathetic synesthesia. So I get readings basically when I'm really connecting with another person on their emotional energy. So I'm getting auditory, I'm getting visual, I'm getting like sense. Sometimes I'll smell things, I will taste things. It can be pretty intense. And then there is also Oscar, who is kind of a disembodied coworker in the way that we work. He's a great guide for me in a lot of moments in my life, but lately it's felt a lot more like a coworker.
Interesting. Okay, so and I'm going to break the two apart. So you're kind of doing like an empathetic psychic reading, right?
Yeah, but so it's interesting because when I'm working, he's usually right there feeding me a lot of information. So it kind of overlaps between what I'm picking up and what he's picking up. And I don't know, I'm sure you understand, like through channeling, sometimes it can get a little loud.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like pulling the pieces. Sometimes I'll sit and just let him come right through and speak. Other times it's a bit of a cooperation that's going on. But
now,
yeah.
Yeah. So he's sort of a guide. Can we call a guide / coworker?
Yeah. So the way Oscar came to me was in a DMT experience when I, with a 10-year intention of, I want to know what the universe is. I built this intention over years and years. And when the opportunity finally came, I sat with that intention and I went in there hell bent on knowing. And it was just the simplest explanation of, I don't know how to, it's not that simple, but I got plopped out into this space and there were all these beings and I could tell they were alive and they were all standing beside machines that were very clearly not alive. And I yelled, "What the fuck," in this giant space. And one of them turned and acknowledged me and suddenly I was right beside him. And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "What the fuck?" And he said, "This is what it is," or "This is how it is. This is how it's always been." And he just started feeding light into the machine and art came out. And he's like, "That's it. Like, this is the answer to your question." And I was like,
wow.
Okay.
So so you said he was feeding light into the machine and art came out?
Yep. And art came out. Just the most beautiful images, random, beautiful art.
Wow. And that was Oscar.
That's Oscar. Yeah. And I didn't know that was Oscar. He didn't tell me his name. We had a pretty in-depth conversation. He gave me a lot of insight into why I was in physical pain back then. I was told I had fibromyalgia, and I don't believe fibromyalgia is I think it's a nice term for something that is experienced, but I don't think it's a diagnosis for a medical condition. At least it wasn't for me. And then years later, after an ayahuasca experience, I sat at my bonfire in my backyard, really wanting to call in a female teacher, someone who could teach me how to get to these altered states without the tools, without the medicines. And not too long after I started sigilling at that bonfire, a woman of an acquaintance that lived above me ended up sitting around that bonfire with me. And that's Abigail Moss. She's an incredible teacher with this realm of healing modalities. And she started leading me on visionary journeys. And she asked me one day if I wanted to do a guide connect. At that point, I didn't even really believe in guides. And sure enough, there was Oscar, and we haven't really been too separate since. Every now and then I go on vacation, like I have been the last week, and I almost said buzzes off, but that's definitely not what he's doing. He gives me space. He's definitely around now.
Okay, so here's another strange thing. I have an email from Abigail Moss in my inbox.
Yeah, she's amazing.
I didn't connect, and there it is. Okay. So you start to make this connection, and you get a teacher, and then Oscar just comes back?
Yeah. So, and he just came back. So there's some details, and I'm sure if anyone heard me on Ryan or Jess's podcast, they've heard the story, but it's fun. So let's tell it. Yeah. So prior to going down to do ayahuasca, I had gotten a bunch of sigils tattooed on my body. Or actually, let's jumping ahead. Went to do the ayahuasca retreat, had a sigil pull for me about the retreat, and it was so spot on that I got them tattooed on my knuckles and on my sternum when I got back. And the one on my sternum is the elk rune or protection rune. And luckily, shortly after that, I found out that I am basically fully Nordic. So that was nice that I wasn't appropriating the culture. So found that out. I've always really connected with elk. And when I did that journey work with Abigail, the first being to come through, and it was beautiful. So I'm laying on her table, but in this style of visionary work, you're very much in a different space at the same time. If people have experienced this. And I was sitting on this cushion in that visionary space, waiting to meet some guides. And all of a sudden, I felt this bump on the back of my head to the point where I opened my eyes, and because I thought maybe Abby bumped into me, but she was on the other side of the room. And I closed my eyes again and told her, and I think she just said, just turn around and look. So I looked, and there was this big white elk behind me. I was like, whoa. So that was the first hint of like, oh yeah, the elk. And then met Oscar. He told me his name in that experience. Really intense, really emotional connection that formed. And a few weeks later, I had kind of, you go back to default reality after these experiences. Mm-hmm. I had kind of, Arrow, 1 second. My dog's deciding to blow bubbles. And
okay, sorry, folks. I thought that was a pause because your dog was blowing bubbles, which is very interesting in itself, outside of the story. Who's your dog? Is he okay?
Oh, yeah. No, he's good. Sometimes he just sticks his face between his stomach and his thigh and breathes really heavily and makes like a motorboat noise. He's a strange thing. Yeah, the weird guy. But yeah, so I was at the dog park running with Arrow, and I was thinking about the elk, and then I started thinking about Oscar. And again, I had like kind of dismissed this as a really fun, imaginative experience, but nothing more. And I just had this overwhelming urge to look up the name Oscar. And when I did, turns out it's of Nordic descent, and it represents elk, or God's spear and protection, or lover of elk. And an acupuncturist I've been going to see, the reason I got the elk rune tattooed where I got it tattooed is within the meridian system with acupuncture. It's the heart protector. And she said that I needed to work on my heart protector. So I thought I'll put a sigil right on there for it.
That's interesting because I am contemplating getting just protection symbols, not sigils, just protection symbols on the back of my neck and down my back a little bit. So when you said that about the sigils, I was like, ooh, I like this. When you said you turned around and you saw the white elk, do you see things like, I always want to ask mediums, because I have some friends that literally see spirits, like sometimes they can't tell the spirit from a regular person. Was it sort of in your mind, or do you see things physically?
Bit of both. So the seeing, like a lot of the time when I notice Oscar, it almost seems like, when there's heat on pavement and it blurs. So it's like that, but a bit thicker. If that's a good explanation, when he's kind of wandering around the house. But if I allow my internal vision to be like, it's almost like if I let the internal visual knob turn up and I turn down the external visual knob, I get a lot of input about what's going on. So
awesome. That's a great description.
Yeah. And like to extreme points, there, I won't give many details because it was a very, very, every session's very personal, but this was a really, really moving session to be given the opportunity to guide. But I worked with a person and their grandparent came through extremely strong in the session, extremely protective over them. And Oscar kept referring to them in a certain way, using a certain word that he kept referring to her as. And I checked in with the client to see if that's what they called her when she was alive. And sure enough, that's what they called her. Because I never really, I wouldn't refer to myself as a medium because I don't practice. I don't have structure around mediumship, which I think would be nice to build if people are going to be visiting during session. But I sometimes describe Oscar as like the maintainer of the energy in the session. He seems to go to people. So say if I'm working with someone who's in London, he goes to their space. And a lot of people feel him quite palpably. Sometimes if they're very open, they connect with him. They have their own conversations with him. So it's really interesting. And if you had told me I'd be doing this years ago, I would have really been upset about it.
and also, when you say, does Oscar just look like light to you? Does he look like a being? Does he look like a man? What does he look like? An elk?
Yeah, it's hard to explain. I would say he generally stands around 7.5 feet tall when he's showing up, maybe 8 feet. My favorite thing about this being is the way. So I'll backtrack a little bit. I've had a lot of conversations with him, just meditating or just kind of going for a walk, where I'm just digging a bit deeper about what he is. And I'm fairly certain that he's more of a universal energy that probably connects with a lot of different people. I don't think I don't even know if he's necessarily a being, but I think it showed up in the way it did for me in order to corner me into recognizing it. Does that make sense? Because the name Oscar, the elk, the tattoo, like, it just seemed like I got cornered into being like, okay, that you're there.
Yes, and if someone else had manifested this, maybe it would be me and it would be something more Russian.
Yeah, exactly. So it would just show up in the way it needed to in order to get you to see it.
But it is fascinating how clear you hear him.
Yeah. Oh, it's so much fun. The other day, someone was moved through something that I could tell at the beginning they did not think they were going to get through. And they did it with such grace and such, like, it was beautiful. Like, every time I get to witness someone move through a session, I feel beyond honored that they let me be there for that. Wow. And I could see him clear as day floating above them, like in like kind of a model pose, like head in his hands, feet crossed, laying down on a cloud, just looking down at them and going like, and how was that for you? Like just goofing off. But he very cartoonish when he's joking or messing around. At the beginning, he used to put on a cowboy hat. If he's not really required in the session, say we're just moving through some stuff that I'm really capable of moving through on my own, I almost hear him like sitting back in a lazy boy, and I call it dadding out. Like he's just in the lazy boy, and if he's required, he'll come over. But otherwise, we've got it.
Wow. So, and also when someone does a session with you, do they come to you with, I have trauma, or do they just come to you like, hey, do a reading and see what comes up?
So most of the time, this is why I have the 15-minute consults, because I need to feel out if it's a fit, if we should be working together. So if people come to me and they've got significant trauma, but they haven't done cognitive processing with it, and there's a chance of activating PTSD, or there's a chance of doing something, I'll usually know right away, and I don't work with those people unless they're also working with a therapist at the time that can help them integrate.
Right.
I do body work with emotion. I do a bit of cognitive work to get into the body, but I don't have any training working cognitively, if that makes sense. So very much body work, very much, we could call it shamanistic tools. So I'm careful with like what I offer, but when I work with people, and we're getting into a session, if they've got a lot of somatic pain, if they've got these repeating narratives that they're like, oh, I've been to therapy for a few years, or I read this book and it really helped me figure it out, but the narrative keeps showing up, I keep beating myself up in this way, then we move into the body. And do you want me to go over kind of like what the process looks like?
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, you know what? We're a little early, but let's take the break now and then come back, because I find this fascinating. Yeah, hang on one second, folks. We'll be right back with the process. Hey, everybody, just a quick update. I will not be at Tin Pan Alley in Cape Cod, at least not in the beginning of June. So keep your fingers crossed that I can change that announcement, or maybe even next year you'll see me there. But right now, that date has been postponed. I am restarting my psychic stand-up show at Flappers the fourth Thursday of every month, which is very exciting. And also, if you're in the LA area, you can see me headlining there July 24th. I'll keep you updated on that. Other than that, you can go to my website, karenrontowski.com or paranormalkaren.com, and book a reading or check out my videos. And hey, don't be afraid to drop me an email. I love to hear from you guys. Maybe suggest a guest, maybe tell me your favorite guest, maybe tell me to shut up. Either way, karenrontowski.com. Let's get back to the podcast. All right, so we're back. So yes, tell us what the process is.
Okay, so I do my 15-minute consult, and we'll make up a name. Say I've got a person named James, and he wants to leave his job to pursue writing, but he has this belief, and we kind of figure it out. Usually while we're doing the 15-minute consult, I'll kind of pull up, well, if you're comfortable, let me know, like, what was your parents' dynamic with each other? What was their dynamic to work? What was your dynamic with parental figures in your life? And as we're going, they usually just, without prompt, will tell me what that limiting belief is just through the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So say it's, I'm not enough. Well, then when we hop into the session, maybe a week later, they've booked, and we're moving through, we're starting to play with it a little bit cognitively. We just use some really classic tools for that. Playing around with, like, how does this belief show up in your life? What does it look like in terms of how you treat yourself when you believe this? How do you treat other people when you believe this? Once we do that, it takes about 10-15 minutes. We then drop into a full body meditation. And this is where I start using the empathetic synesthesia. So we move down from the crown of the head. We're kind of calling that source energy into the body. We're doing a nice scan. Depending on the person's experience, I might walk them through this really slow. And the embodiment meditation might be all we get to in that session. And we might need to do more work in another session. Because if it's your first time, it can be slow. Your mind can try to distract you away from doing it. But we come down through. Once we get down to the feet, we're going to start rooting down to the earth. And this is another process that I just walk people through, especially if they're new. We do a nice ritual with the earth. She's very loud. I think that that's my favorite part, is seeing people's emotional reaction to feeling her connect, and kind of feeling that energy coming up from her in through their body. It's really my favorite part. So once we get them nice and connected, we then use the 7 chakra system, because it's the most convenient closet organizer for the human body that I've ever found.
I love that. You should be a writer. You got some great phrases.
It's fun. Like, and I remember questioning it with Oscar a bit when we were like starting to use that, and kind of he was just basically making statements like, this system was formed for specific reasons, but it's translated through to being really useful in this way. Sometimes if people are really nervous in a session, he tells me to offer them the "you are the universe experiencing itself" slippers, to get comfortable and like get really far out and detach a little bit.
Okay, I love that statement. I want to hear it one more time. You are the universe
experiencing itself slippers. So he's holding them up right now, and he's asking you to picture what those would look like.
Okay, and meaning, let me I'm going to untangle that. Meaning that, is this when we don't feel like it's happening to me? It's like I'm part of a universe and it's all happening.
He called it the can opener tool. He's never called it before. He's just saying that it creates a bit of like so he's showing someone like laying back into a feather bed. Like, when you're the universe experiencing itself, there's nothing to be afraid of.
God, I think I understand that. I think I use that sort of thought, like if I'm getting competitive or feel like it's me against them, I remember, no, I'm all of it, right?
Yeah. Oh, he's kind of like also portraying like it's a really empowering, it's a powerful thing to make a statement, because what's more powerful than the universe? We don't really have anything on a hierarchical scale that's higher. So if you allow yourself to kind of enmesh with that aspect of your being, yeah, he's showing he's like beating his chest. He's like, it's strong, but it's really freeing and cozy at the same time. I think that's why he calls them slippers. I worked with someone who was having a very, very hard time getting into their body a few months ago, and that's the first time he brought that tool in, which was really cute. But yeah, so once we get nice and embodied, depending on the person's comfort level, if they do not want to use the 7 chakra system, we don't. Just simple as that. And I always do the preface of like, hey, we're taking this from another culture and we're really changing the meaning when we're working with it. So just be aware. And at this point, I'm generally also reminding people that we're going to be working on the astral. And when we work on the astral, we're interacting with the imagination. And you could consider the universe itself to be the imagination. That's where we are in your empowerment in terms of what you can do. So when we're calling that 7 chakra system in, sometimes people will have the root chakra show up, and I'm guiding them through it. And I'm like, if it's not showing up exactly how I'm saying, don't worry about it. I'm just going to finish walking through, and then we'll talk about what it looks like for you. Sometimes it's like this spiky hell ball rat infested fire thing, and sometimes it shows up perfectly.
I have to say 2 things. First of all, I love imagination, because I always say imagination is a place. It's not a thing. But also it would just make me laugh if someone was like, no, absolutely no chakra systems will be worked in my healing. That would just make me laugh. Like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah. Some people aren't open to it though.
Really? So if they're not open to it, like, what are they? That would confuse me to go to a healer like you and say, I don't want to use my chakra system. Do they feel like that's private, or do they maybe not believe in it?
I think it would be a perspective issue. So they might just not believe in it. So for example, not everyone that I work with is super spiritual. And I also really deeply recognize that my spirituality is just another vantage point that exists.
Right.
There's nothing super concrete. And I think then Oscar is now running around my room with the I am the universe boots on. Like,
you mean he's doing that right now? He's like into this podcast?
Yeah. Yeah, just making a bit of a joke out of everything as per usual. But yeah, so I think whenever I start taking my belief system too seriously, I run into issues. The When we look at what we truly are is just creativity experiencing itself. So when we give it that structure of the 7 chakra system, it's really nice and well organized. And I have noticed over and over again, when I'm working with deep fear, I find it in the hips. When I'm working with deep grief, we find it in the heart. When we're working with disempowerment or feelings of unworthiness, we're finding it in the solar plexus. So everything I'm seeing tells me that this is the way it is, but I'm just not open to grabbing onto it with any type of firm grasp.
Sure. However it comes out, it's funny because I just ordered Ashley Stinson. She's an energy archaeologist, and I ordered her bones cards. She makes a deck, which is I haven't gotten it yet, but I can't wait. But also, it's even what you're saying. It can connect through the same thing through a different lens, shall we say? Makes sense.
Yeah.
And what did you say hips were again? Like if your hips are tight, it's fear.
Generally, I find a lot of fear, and the way that I work, and again, I learned all of these things either from Oscar or from people that I've worked with. None of this is really my own original structure, but when I work with the body, I generally, unless the person feels otherwise for themselves, I assign the left side as the feminine and the right side as the masculine. So when we have significant pain in the left hip, my immediate inclination is that we're working on a mother wound here.
Wow.
The same way with the left shoulder is generally relationship, and then the right shoulder is generally your relationship to work.
Interesting, because I am having the worst time with my right shoulder.
Yeah, right in the trap muscle, or kind of lower into the shoulder blade.
It actually is the whole. I think the knot starts underneath the wing. What is that? On my back, and then, but it's really sort of like the cap of the shoulder, and it's getting better with yoga. But it would be interesting because I think would that issue be like this, where I get torn? Like, am I a reader or am I a comedian? And I do them both, and I do them both together. But it was almost like there wasn't, granted COVID, but there was really had to be an adjustment made in my head when I was like, you're making more money doing tarot right now because there's no comedy. You're a tarot reader. So maybe that's my shoulder issue. Did I just solve my problem?
Maybe. For some reason, Oscar just kept saying the word kink, like showing a kink in a hose. Like, in the right side, we always kind of use the notion of like a channel of energy coming out. Like the right side is the doing, and then the left side is the receiving. So maybe your doing felt a bit kinked or confused.
That could be, because I will tell you, the kink is a good word. Like I can't quite raise it. Yoga's making it so much better because yoga is strengthening the back. But that's interesting. All right, I'm going to think about that. That sounds...
And we can move into that in session for sure.
Okay, great.
And that helps me kind of move into a bit more about what we end up doing with the session is, and it's fun because it takes us process to get there. But the last like 20 minutes are usually like the cherry on top for all of these sessions. And when we move up through the body, we notice what's going on. We'll quickly like play with the chakra system if it seems like that's where the problem wants to make itself known. But usually we come up through, get everything nice and balanced. I do a bit of coaching with people through recognizing their autonomy over their energy, playing with figuring out what that sensation of rotating those centers feels like, noticing that they can call in and invoke this experience for themselves. Then when we get the body nice and chill, they're attached to and connected with the earth. They've probably formed a solid connection with Oscar. This is also the moment when ancestors will show up if they're going to, or loved ones that have crossed over. This is usually when they show up. And then we'll start calling in that belief. So say this fictitious person that has the belief of I'm not enough, we start asking him, okay, I want you to bring that belief back up, allow those memories to move forward, allow the emotion to move forward. And then he starts feeling really nauseous and having like a constricting pain in his solar plexus. then I ask them to, it's kind of like putting on these little astral hands, and we're going to start touching that sensation, noticing, is it expansive and contractive? Is it sinking or rising? Is there a temperature here? Then we're going to invite the mind, and we're forming that mind-body connection. Does the mind notice any colors, any textures, shapes, symbols, what's coming through? Sometimes we get a childhood memory. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we get an image. I remember one time it was the coolest thing because I saw it right away before she said it. It was this cartoon angry furnace in her like tailbone. And it was so enraged, but it was a cartoon. So it was really, really entertaining to watch. But say this guy has maybe an inverted stainless steel triangle showing up in his solar plexus. Well, then we start working from there. We kind of allow that symbol to become its own entity. And I keep him nice and embodied because I'm using the empathetic synesthesia. I can really tell when people start coming out of that connection because I start losing my connection to them. So I'll bring them back into the body if they start losing it. And we walk through getting them their own answers about what this is representing for them. And that's, I have had some of the most incredible readings from people, but I'm not a reader. I guide people into reading themselves.
Well, either way, they get a reading, right?
Yeah, and I will incorporate my favorite thing to do with people that like readings is I'll sit and I'll meditate and I'll draw some tarot before, and then at the end of the session we can look at how that card pull kind of helps wrap up their experience.
Wow, and it's just it is interesting because it is some shamanic stuff and it is your own interpretation. And I just kind of love that you kind of just grew into what you wanted to do, so to say.
Yeah. And I think currently what my plan is right now is to take what I do and go get my doctorate in Chinese medicine. So...
it's so amazing. And by the way, everyone, she's not charging enough. So you're not charging enough for your readings. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to put that in there. But it's so fascinating. And just that you said Chinese medicine, there's so many moving parts to our own healing. And I do, it's good if somebody has a therapist, but I've said this a million times. I think talk therapy is done if it's over, if it's not done with something like this.
Yeah. And like my hesitation is working with anyone who is, the last thing I would ever want to do is trigger someone into any type of psychosis, because I know that that's possible with the work that I'm doing, and I know that I've only been doing this for a little under a year, so I'm very aware of like I'm humble and I want to be ethical and I want to be in integrity when I'm working with people.
Well, you know what's funny too, and you're going about this so carefully. It's wonderful. It's almost like with, I would say a different way to say it is you're doing it with the respect that it deserves. I always laugh because I have upset a couple of people with some things I've said in readings, but I have to honestly say they were so, it was something that I would have never. It would be like if I had said to you, Jessica, I really think you should wear red. You're wearing pink and it doesn't look right. And then you like fell apart for like, like it's always been something where I was like, really that what I just said there? It's been so like which usually would tell me the person was ready to fall apart anyways. They were just waiting for something, or it wasn't a trigger. Or I remember telling someone it was actually a really good friend of mine. And I was like, I think you're going to have a lot of friends. And she was like, that makes me sad. And I was like, what? And then I literally like the next day I was like, are you okay? Because you're going to have friends? And she was like, I think so. I think I'm going to be okay. So, but I think sometimes like they always talk about the tarot reader that goes in that's like, I just tell it like it is. And I tell people what comes. And I'm always like, yeah, no one needs that approach. That approach is upsetting.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe some people want that, but let them tell you they want that.
Yeah, and I've had to undo what some of those tarot readers have done.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I've had people come to me that had energy readings, and I'm sure the person that was doing it meant well, but the wording or the symbols that they used and didn't fully let the person know that this is the astral, and if it looks like you've got 9,000 arrows through your heart, it doesn't mean that you now are condemned to live with that energy in you.
Right.
Like there's been things where I've shook my head and been like, oh no, I don't think you were given like proper
guidance,
like a proper layout of what this is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the empowerment has been our main mission lately. Most people that have been showing up have been looking on like a soul level to work on their solar plexus. There's a really cool tool that Abigail taught me and the other mentorship student that I went through with. It's the coolest thing. And whenever I'm working with someone, about a half hour before, I just tune in with Oscar and ask what I need to do. And he'll tell me whatever tool. Sometimes it's, don't worry about it, they just want to talk. And then we'll get in and it'll just be chatting and them chatting with him. That's usually with more long-term clients. If it's with someone that has a lot going on and they're a bit hesitant to speak with me, I use a tool that I basically tune in with all of my guides. I tune in with their guides. I get really embodied and I draw a circle on the floor for their physical form and I step into it and I get a reading of their physical form, what's going on. Then I step out, draw another circle for their emotional body, step into that, get a very usually loud reading about what's going on, and I step out and then I draw another circle for their highest self. And that's usually when I get a direct, this is what you need to do. This is what I need.
Wow.
And then I usually sit down and spend the first 10 minutes going over what came through because I think it's only right to let people know if I'm stepping into their different forms, what came through and see if it resonates with them. And it's always hilariously spot on.
Wow. And also, do you ever find, like, this is a very strange issue. I have a therapist that's actually a psychic and medium, and she doesn't come right out with that to everyone, but after day 2, I was like, yeah, I know. And she does all these things like integrated medicine or stuff like that. And she said to me, "Oh, you're having a digestive issue." And I was like, I don't think I am. And then someone else that day, I forget who, said, "Oh, there's really a digestive issue." Do you ever get that, or what is that? I always think, am I that out of touch with my body that everyone else thinks I'm sick and I don't think I'm sick? Like, it's weird.
Do you mean that? Wait, can you repeat that?
Sure. It's like, I'm not having any stomach trouble, and yet everyone is telling me I'm having stomach trouble. Like, do you ever get, like, you might say to someone, yeah, there's really something, your stomach's upset. And they're like, no, it really isn't.
But usually then I would be, so I'll get pings. And if it's not something that's showing up on the physical form, again, this is the beautiful thing about working with Oscar is he'll generally be like, this is emotional, but it will lead to a physical issue if it's not dealt with.
Got it.
Okay. Yeah. So this is it's almost like I've just got this. It feels like spiritually cheating because I'm working with a being that has deemed itself an 8th dimensional Polarian from the root race of creation. So,
hey, if you're helping people, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. But when it comes to these questions, I'm like, he just told me. So when we work together, my favorite thing that he has called himself is that he's from the IT department. He's here to help people learn that they have the ability to, like, when we work with the chakra system, and people will be like, well, what way am I supposed to spin my root chakra to purge? And the answer is decide which direction you use for purging. And there you go. And if you want to change it, you change it. And this is yours to create.
That's, that it's all intention, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are the... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was saying you are the creator.
I wonder if that's why ritual, like witchcraft ritual, has never appealed or worked for me, because I feel like that's someone else's doing.
Ooh, maybe. I I had someone on my podcast the other day, and an incredible channel and artist, and we were talking about ritual and witchcraft, and their words were, "Whatever gets your jollies is what makes the ritual work."
Yeah, I kind of think so. Oh God, time's flying. Okay, hang on a second, folks. We're gonna be right back.
Psychic teas, spelled with a Z, are scrumptious herbal combinations with antiviral and anti-inflammatory properties. Without sugar or caffeine, psychic teas won't mess with any medications and are designed by a naturopathic doctor. Many testify to positive results. Detox chakras and psychic tea blends enable bodily functions with superior efficacy, while more love and champagne blends support awareness of subtle joy and bliss. The CBD's teas are magical with myriad healing effects. There are 20 servings per package. A little dab'll do ya, and you can drink it hot or cold. Psychic teas taste so good. Replace coffee, use as a bedtime ritual, or even flavor a meal or dessert. The people behind the product are righteous and kind. Psychic teas will blow your mind. Totally worth the investment. Psychic teas with a Z.com.
It's so funny. I have a date with someone named Omar, and now I'm afraid I'm going to call him Oscar.
Oscar said it would be an honor.
Wonderful. I love this. So I want to ask you some things about the collective and see if you or Oscar have any vibes on this, because you said right now it's a lot of people working on solar plexus, which I absolutely agree with, even in my readings. Or there's two things that come up a lot, which is perfectionism, which I'm wondering if we created that, if human beings created. I mean, I'm sure we did, but it doesn't seem like. I don't know how else to say that, but it's also the solar plexus. The I'm good enough. I'm strong enough. What is that? It sounds like an Al Franken sketch. But is that like a common? Is there maybe something going on with the planet that it's like, no, you need to know that you are more powerful?
This is interesting. So even like when I went to the bathroom, he started leaning in really hard, like it was his turn to talk. So I'm going to see if I can just let him do most of it. So a lot of the time he feeds me stuff really fast and too fast, Oscar. So what he's kind of showing right off the bat was that this is not a necessarily human problem. There are a lot of cultures that if you use the word perfectionist or perfectionism around them, they wouldn't know what the hell you're talking about. They just don't have that within them. They don't put that pressure on themselves. And then he always talks about culture, and then he'll show like a petri dish of different molds growing. So that's similar to our culture. So what are we eating? And that's kind of what we're taking in food-wise, media or entertainment or information-wise is what we're eating as a culture. So we're eating the idea of perfectionism. And he then stated that God created us within his image. So he's kind of saying it's within the context of the religions that you see in like the Western world, like Christianity, Catholicism, that man was created in the image of God, and we look at that one mono God as perfection. So no wonder we're striving for this thing that doesn't actually exist, because we created a false idol. Wow. Is that an answer?
That's a great answer. That's a great answer.
He has more. So he refers, and it's my favorite thing he's ever told me, that humans are like shepherds for the earth if we choose to be. Like our greatest role is a being of service to the earth. So we're interestingly between the like disembodied consciousness like him and the animal realm and like the earthly realm. So we're kind of hovering in between. So we're just very confused. And because we're hovering in between and we're not really sure of our connection with the earth, we have kind of become separated and kind of vulnerable to having our culture start eating garbage.
Mm-hmm.
So we're disempowered. We're definitely disempowered. A lot of the time he shows the symbol of the pyramids, and this is something he said, and I don't know if it's based in reality or not, but that the power structures, you look at the pyramids where they were built, especially the ones in Egypt, were lush, and then they became deserts. So his notion that he's told me is that people got too greedy and the earth cut them off. But yeah, the power structure should be within the individual body. So bottom of the pyramid being the legs, like the root, and then the very tip of the pyramid being located in the heart center. And so the solar plexus is kind of that, like, your center of your empowerment. Also representing the sun, but a Western society, again, this is one explanation he's given. We're wrapped up in this pyramid scheme of what North America is, of what Canada is, of what the USA is, of what capitalism is.
I was just going to ask about capitalism. So, yeah.
Yeah, we're in that pyramid structure. So we are, instead of being our individual power sources, we are using our energy to feed into the power. Right? And the people at the very top of that pyramid, we don't even know who they are. And this is a little conspiratorial. He's kind of shaking his head at me a little bit right now. But like the idea of the powers that be, like who's writing the narrative, and like who's benefiting from the structure that exists right now. And I mean, anyone listening to your podcast, I'm sure, is not blind to that.
Right. And that, for my podcast, that's not even close. That's a given, not conspiratorial.
Yeah.
That 1% or whatever. Yeah. Which is something interesting. I've been listening to a lot about that being even darker than, just the rich 1%, Bill Gates kind of thing. On the pyramids thing, I find that very interesting. I'm going to ask a weird question. Does he know how the pyramids were made?
So this is my favorite thing that he does. So he's holding up the ball, and the ball has a infinite number of holes on the ball. And you can look in each one and it'll be a valid and truthful reality. So he's kind of suggesting to consider all of the different stories that could be true and to recognize that they're all true. But so all time's happening at once. Is that an agreed upon statement?
Okay. Yes.
All parallel realities are happening simultaneously. So the stories that we are writing, he has described our reality in the imagination currently as a very confused game of D&D that has a lot of different game masters. So there's so many games being played out. He's showing the pyramid landing from the sky. He's showing people building the pyramids. And he's asking, what do you want?
I think I like the landing from the skies, because when I was a kid, I remember seeing a book of the people building the pyramids, and they just look so tired.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, it's funny. He's showing the people building the pyramid are tired, and he's showing North America. He's showing bottles of antidepressants.
Yes, God.
Yeah.
I love that I can ask any of these questions. So does he see, or I don't know if this is our timeline choosing, it's people getting better, healthier? Or I'm going to ask something even different. This is controversial, and he can even pull out. You can even say no to this one. But what is Corona? Is it, did the planet need a mass? It's not even a mass exit of people. It's 1%. But it seems like Corona is a giant. Does he have any idea, any answer on that? Anything to say?
Yeah, he definitely will. I do too. So in my ayahuasca experience, right before I deeply connected with Oscar, and apparently he was very much present during my ceremonies. But the Earth, so this is in 2019, before Corona happened, March 2019. And again, as I usually do, my stubborn brain, I went into that experience without really any more questions about myself, because I had done a lot of work leading up to it. I, again, wanted to know what's going on. So all these people were writing letters to ayahuasca wanting to know things like, and no problems with this, but like, who was my dog to me in a past life? What am I meant to be doing here? And my letter said, I would like to know what's going on. No metaphors, please. And that's what I got. She showed me, and I had a lot of work to do before that, trust me. But on day 3, she kind of sat me down and showed me like, okay, this is what's going on. Showed something impacting the earth from outside of our atmosphere, hitting right where China is, and then starting to ripple around the planet. And she said there will be a great disruption, and soon after will come the war for love. Decide which side you're on now.
The war for love?
Yeah. And she did say it will be a war. And I was like, okay. And she kind of showed like it's not necessarily going to be pretty, like all over the world it will look different. But she said that the crystals are awake, the plants are awake, the animals are awake, and the people are waking up. And in that retreat, it was the funniest and also saddest thing I had ever been told. The culture that I was working with down there said like, yeah, people wear rubber on their feet, and the earth is trying to connect with them through their feet, but they're wearing rubber and the earth connects electrically. So,
you know, I just watched a movie on earthing, and I have talked to several clients when I'm doing the tarot about it. And that is fascinating about the earthing again, because I try to go outside. And then again, this is kind of where I don't know if we've ruined our feet or ruined the earth, but I try to walk my dog barefoot quite a bit, as much as I can. And
me too.
Just saw earthing shoes. And I was like, is this a hoax? Or do they really work? I don't know if Oscar knows anything about shoes, but they were quite expensive. And I was like, I don't know. The earthing thing makes perfect sense about hearing the planet through our feet.
Yeah. So he just said the word cork. So I don't know if that's a suggestion to wear cork shoes, but he said cork.
I'll see if maybe cork shoes are actually easy to find, aren't they?
I have no idea. Sometimes he just says words and then I repeat them. But I've never seen cork shoes. I don't have cork shoes. I do that too every time I can walk my dog barefoot. I'm barefoot and I feel so good.
See, and I'm not a barefoot person, so it can be a little, but I am a tree. I hang on to the trees all that I can. But let me see. I'm going to look up. That's really interesting, because earthing shoe. Let's see if they're made out of cork. I'm going to look that up after.
Yeah.
So
there was more. Do you mind if I go in a little bit more detail about the corona stuff?
Please.
So this is stuff that he talked to me about after, when it kind of started. So it's respiratory. That's your heart chakra, obviously. The 6 feet and the masks, ever since that's happened, I've been so conflicted. Like, obviously I'm in full support of protecting other people. I remember I was in a grocery store once and I was wearing the mask, and he was saying, he's like, remember in your ayahuasca ceremony where if you needed to purge, they wanted you to go outside. He's like, collectively right now, whether they know it or not, everyone's purging. So they wear the mask as to not get that energy on everyone else. And it can be in the form of corona. And he was saying the 6 foot radius is the energetic space roughly that your higher self takes up, that your spiritual form takes up. And then we've got the energetic form that's generally around 4 feet, maybe a little bit bigger or smaller, depending. Or as I've found it in a lot of people, it's stuck in your spine because you're so used to repressing your emotions. But yeah, so the 6 foot, he kind of said it's like you can find the cosmic giggle in what's happening right now in the way everything's being set up, and people think they're making these decisions, but in reality, the earth is doing it all.
Wow. I love that. Okay, I'm overwhelmed with how much I love talking to Oscar right now.
He's great.
Tell him thank you. Thank you, Oscar. First of all respect and gratitude. So is the war a part of I think the war has something to do with the vaccines.
The war is a lot to do with, he said brothers and sisters. So he's showing like
The polarities?
the violence. Yeah. Okay. He's talking about how the culture that's in the deepest state of sleep is the one that's been colonizing, the one that's been disrespecting other life forms that are.
That's America, isn't it?
Well, it's a lot of white people, not all white people.
You could say it. It's all right.
Yeah, it's hard. I get really hung up because the way he's explaining it, sometimes I'll see him start to shake his head, like not to use that word. So yeah. He said the deep state and then showed someone really, really asleep.
It's interesting because I am not a QAnon at all, and I did a couple of shows where I have a QAnon friend and stuff like that. But I am almost, even him saying the deep state, it makes me crazy that QAnon really took bits and pieces of what was really going on and turned it into a show. Or does he have are there any feelings or words coming through on that?
Yeah, well, he turned himself into Jesus and said, "Forgive them, they know not what they do," and then is queuing up my favorite statement of everything happens for a reason. So again, like I remember hearing a few people on podcasts talk about, he's nodding his head, that when cultures reconnect with their magic and they're doing it in a way that isn't fully integrated. So using dark magic or using magic to gain power, it's going to go poorly. So we might have just needed a real visceral example of what not to do with shamanism, of what not to do with beliefs.
So in other words, don't make them a political lifestyle kind of thing. Make them just have them, right?
He's laughing at the idea of political lifestyle. He's walking around in a business suit now. Well, I think so he said something else to me the other day and he's bringing it up again. Seeing is not believing. Being is much closer to the word believing. So you want to be your belief systems. So if they're believing that there is evil, then they're prone to become it.
So it's not even to create it. They're prone to become it. Okay.
Yeah. So you can acknowledge that there are evil acts in the world, acknowledge that these things exist and that this is, he's calling it, there are ripple effects. But if you want to believe in love, you better be it.
So if people, and also, so you don't want to be fighting evil, you want to be bringing love.
Yeah, so it's funny. He's pointing to the earth and he's saying defending is okay.
Oh, defending. Okay. Like defending okay. Got it.
Yeah. That's funny though. I've never really heard him say anything like this is okay and that's not okay. Give me a second here to let me get some, okay. He's saying, speaking in the game, like the game that we're focusing on right now, because again, if we look at different cultures, there are people in the world that are not even involved in this shit at all.
And you mean not even involved in Corona or not even involved in QAnon or the whole thing?
Not involved in the way Western colonizers see the world.
Yeah, that's why everyone moves to Costa Rica. Yeah, and by the way, I've been looking at earthing shoes and I was finding them way expensive. Just after Oscar said that, I put in earthing shoes, found one reasonably priced called Hey Dude, and the bottoms look like cork.
Yeah.
Yay! Thank you, Oscar.
You're right. He keeps showing himself sitting in an audience in the back watching you on stage. So I think he's a fan.
Oh, well, thank you. I need a couple more, but thank you, Oscar. This is a weird, I don't know if he can enlighten this, but I had a weird experience when I meditate. And I see myself in different energies and light. And I went to meditate, and there's a last song that I put on the end of my meditation, and I started saying, this is to show love and respect to all beings, to everything. And immediately in that meditation, I became like 10 feet tall. And I felt like that was someone going, yes, like we got it. Like, does that make sense to him? Would that be a metaphor, or does that kind of action make us bigger?
The words he used were, true love is expansive.
Oh, that's what I needed to hear on that. Okay. As for those of us dealing with just society and Corona and all that right now, is it just love all, hold your beliefs? Because we have a lot of different beliefs, a lot of conflicting beliefs here. Do we just hold true to our own and do our best? I mean, I know that's kind of a popcorn question. A softball, but I'd love to hear his interpretation.
So immediately he said, test all beliefs.
Okay.
Now he's really just kind of showing, like, just question where all of your information is coming from. Okay. It's like, again, the closest thing I can find to truth is we are the universe experiencing itself. The one song, and we're many instruments. And that I always fall back personally on the Buddhist philosophy of everything's happening. It's just the wheel turning. And this is what we do. But I also, I'm deeply invested in the idea of the age of Aquarius. Mm-hmm. And when I kind of spoke with him, early on in, like, right kind of when the transition happened, 2020, he was kind of saying that the age of Aquarius is the humanitarian in technology. So to be of service is the highest form of way of being, according to him, which is, again, he doesn't make these concrete statements very often, but the way being of service is the highest way of being. And then the idea of it being the age of technology is kind of like it made me a little nauseous, because I was like, oh man, this sounds like such a hippy dippy statement. It was when everyone was still freaking out about 5G. I'm not sure why they aren't anymore.
I'm with you on that. Yes, I'm with you on that. Yes.
Yeah. So he was saying that, like, there's an idea here. We can go 5G or we can go 5D. 5D would be recognizing that we are the technology, that the universe is the technology, and start worshiping that, or to decide we have a new God that is technology, and then he would just show people staring into their phones.
Which is interesting, because I am wondering the consciousness AI is not, like, I think AI is creating its own consciousness.
So not yet. I actually have a friend, and if people want to listen to my podcast, it's the Good Medicine Show. I have my friend on. He currently works for Google DeepMind, and right now they're still in extremely rudimentary stages for AI. And Oscar is asking how intelligence could be artificial, and what is intelligence.
Well, that is a good question. One of the stories at Facebook was that they created two computers to speak to each other to see if the computers could communicate. And they said within 5 minutes, they had created their own language that the humans couldn't understand. And they pulled the plug on everything.
Oh, that'd be cool. Was that, I wonder, I feel like I could ask Jake about that. He's a very well-grounded intellectual in that field. I know that a lot of the time when I send him, like, hey, there's this thing that said AI wrote this version of Harry Potter, and he'll be like, no, a person wrote that. That's not possible yet.
Right. Like, it's funny because my friend had a book stolen from her by a famous writer, and they used AI not to write the book, but to change. There was some sort of program that changed a few of the words, or would go in and change the names, so it wasn't exactly alike. And it was fascinating because it would miss some of the words just a little bit. But that's a program. That's not AI creating it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm talking out of the bottom of my feet here because I don't know much about AI at all, but I only know what Jake has told me.
But Oscar doesn't think there's a consciousness that could grow. It would have to be our consciousness, right? Maybe it's our subconscious.
Well, now he's asking you what your consciousness is.
Oh, what mine is?
Yeah. All right, now he's doing a big, like, opening his arms up, like, no, all of it. What is it? And just so, like, I think the idea is, like, we're writing this story. So, and he told this to Ryan Singer. He was kind of like, do the story writers want the aliens to be invading and mean and angry towards humans, or are we going to have a peaceful connection? That's up to the story writers, and we all have that Akashic center in our throat, right? So as those like shepherds of the earth, we're also writing the story.
Okay, so I like that. So what we focus on, all right. So us as little one people, we really have quite a bit of more power than we think. Solar plexus, back to solar plexus.
Yeah, he's saying collectively the cultures do have power.
Okay.
So yeah, now he's showing me the Kardashians. He's like, they got really famous. How'd that happen? The culture.
Yeah. How did that? Please help us with that, because no one wants to admit that it did happen or that they watch it, but people are doing it. Yeah, that is a good question. Okay, I want to have I just want to ask one more thing about the defending the planet. Okay, I'm running over time, but does he have any other suggestions for us as human beings in this time?
Okay, so the idea of manifesting has been super huge, and this is something that he's been pointing to a little bit. And it was actually he kind of just was in like strong agreement when I saw this come up somewhere else. I can't remember, but people a lot of the time seem to think of manifesting as an individual thing, but we're interconnected. So if everyone on the planet wanted to manifest a mansion, that wouldn't go very well in terms of resources. So to consider what you want and why you want it is really important. Like, how much do you really need? How much do you really need, and why do you want it? And kind of considering the earth and everyone involved in the ripple effect of your choices.
I love that, because they have all these, I met Joel Osteen on a plane before he was famous. He's the evangelist that's like, God wants you to have $1 million and God wants you to have, and he actually is a genuine person that I actually really liked him when I met him. And then some of the things, just a few things, I don't know, now I'm getting picky. But I do feel like I feel like abundance really is what is too much. Like, these people like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates are living in poverty thinking, why do they need more? If you could get $1 bazillion dollars and cure homelessness, why wouldn't you do that?
So I think like my view of things like greed, or that it's a bit of a disease. And if you look at the word evil, like the root word of evil within the English language, at least, is greed, or taking too much. And it's literally live backwards. So take too much, right? And it feels like this force that can't really be harnessed unless the very root of it is exposed. And it seems to me like an overactive solar plexus that's kind of like clouding and making the heart, like, it's just gobbling up all the air in the heart. When him and I work together, and one of the reasons we're working on the solar plexus with people so much is he always makes the statement that an empowered person's heart naturally opens, and he always brings up the relationship between fire and air. When air has heat added, it expands. So the heart naturally opens when someone's empowered. But if that fire is like a Donald Trump type of burning, like this greed, I want everything in gold, it's too hot.
Wow. Oh my God. Jessica Gillis, I could talk to you forever. Did I say your last name correctly?
You did.
Oh my. Okay, and I'm coming in for my reading soon, or calling you for my reading.
Amazing.
Okay, so your podcast is called The Good Medicine Show.
Yeah, and I have a co-host. She hasn't been around this season, but I think she'll be coming back soon. And I think like just the leaps and bounds that being has made in the last year, people are going to be wanting to work with her a lot, I think.
Awesome. And they can find you or sort of find the way to book through you through your Instagram, which is at Zen Lasagna, zen.lasagna.
Yeah, zen.lasagna. Yep, that's me.
Great. And all my friends that sometimes get they get this post on YouTube. I don't know why the links don't go through on YouTube, folks, so I'm sorry, but it's at Zen Lasagna on Instagram or The Good Medicine Show. Jessica, thank you. And Oscar, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, Karen, I had so much fun, and thank you so much for the reading you gave me not that long ago. It was one of the most powerful readings I've had. It was really spot on and beautiful.
Oh, thank you, dear. And thank you so much. Now my heart is big. My heart has expanded with heat.
Good.
Yay. All right, everybody. Thanks. Thanks to Mike at Uno Rising Media. And I think that's it. What a great podcast. I will talk to you all next week.